gives me great pleasure now to welcome our first keynote speaker this morning to set the mood, to set the tone, and to set us off on the right path. Dear delegates, please welcome the EU Commissioner for Energy and Housing, Dan Jørgensen.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Christian, for an excellent introduction. Europe needs to show the power to play and the will to win. Sounds like something a king would say in the series Vikings, right? I'll give you a cliffhanger, and I'll get back to it in the end of my speech, because I do actually think that we have a lot to learn from the Vikings right now. The power to play and the will to win. Well, last month the EU sent a very powerful message to Russia. No more. No more will we let you weaponize your energy against us. No more will we let Russia blackmail our countries. And no more will we indirectly help fill up the war chests of Kremlin. We will stop the import of energy from Russia. We've already come a long way since February 3 years ago. I remember being Minister of Energy in Denmark at that time, and we spent literally 24 hours a day the first weeks making emergency plans for what we would do if Putin cut the gas to Europe. Which companies would we force to close down? Where would we send men in uniform to close down companies in Denmark? That would have been necessary, and my country is not even as exposed as many other European countries. Had he closed down the energy export to Europe, had he closed the gas, we would have been in a recession. It would have been a terrible situation for Europe. That was, of course, a wake-up call. And fast, we moved away from making emergency plans to making plans for how to become independent of this gas, how to bring down our use of this gas. And in many ways, it's fair to say that we succeeded. Not only with gas, coal. We got 51% of our coal from Russia. Now we get 0. We got 27% of our oil, now we get 3. We got 45% of our gas, now we get 13. But it's still too much. So even though I will argue it would be difficult for any other continent on the planet to change so fundamentally energy sources as we've actually done, so even though that is in a sense a success, still, last year we imported for 33 billion euros of Russian energy. First months of this year, it was 1.8 billion per month. This will obviously not stand. So now we're taking the final steps. At the end of this year, all member states need to put forward plans on how they will get 100% rid of this dependency. And from the end of this year, we ban new contracts and spot market contracts for gas, and at the end of 27, we also ban the long-term contracts. This is not a small thing. The EU has never taken a step like this towards another country, but we do it. So, energy dependency, security, it's at the core of everything we do. But we also face other huge challenges. In many countries, when politicians like myself assume an office, they swear on the Bible. I will let you in on a little secret. when you become EU Commissioner, you're taken to the 13th floor of the Bellarmont, to Ursula von der Leyen's office, and you are made to solemnly swear on the Draghi report. I'm joking, and I'm not really joking. She did actually give us a printed copy at the very first meeting. Now, being newly approved Minister of Energy, not Minister, but former Minister and newly approved Commissioner of Energy, I had obviously read it in detail before, because Draghi mentions energy more than 700 times. Energy is at the core of our competitiveness. And right now, of course, it's challenged. We pay 2 to 3 times more for our energy in Europe than our competitors do in the US and in China. We are also still, and unfortunately increasingly so, in a climate crisis. And the fact that other countries on this planet steps back in the fight against climate change means that we have to step forward. There will be no backtracking, there can only be fast tracking, because as opposed to the other crises that we are in the middle of, this will not disappear. Hopefully in 10 years we will have peace in Ukraine, been able to contain the threat from Russia. Hopefully we'll have normalized trading relationships across the Atlantic. Hopefully we will have brought down the prices of our energy and increased our competitiveness. But I hate to say it, climate change not only will still be here, it will be worse. Much worse. As a decision maker, so are all of you in different capacities, we get a lot of reports and we listen to a lot of experts. And usually, when people are trying to tell you something, they have a positive message somewhere. And you usually think, when you get all the nuances, that okay, it's maybe bad, but it's also better than I thought on some levels. But whenever I get a new report on the status of our climate, the conclusion is always it was worse than we thought. So even if we manage to reach our targets, even if other parts of the planet follow our lead, even if you do all the things that we need to do, still we will need to keep fighting climate change, because there's already too much greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Okay. So this is a bleak picture. Our competitiveness is under pressure, therefore our prosperity, therefore our welfare, therefore the social fabric that holds us together, the security dimension, climate change dimension. The good news is that many of the solutions that we need overlap. That these crises are interlinked also means that the solutions are interlinked. And we know, to a large extent, what it is that we need to do. We need to deploy more renewables fast. We need to become more energy efficient fast. Now, if your job is to electrify Europe, then that's good news. Because when we transform our energy systems to become far more independent of fossil fuels from other parts of the world, this is not only about security, by the way, it's also just common sense. 2 years ago, we imported for more than 400 billion euros of fossil fuels in 1 year. When we move away from that, obviously, electrification is at the core of that transition. When we set ourselves the objective to become far more energy efficient, obviously electrification is at the core of that. Now, this is not just a political speech, even though many of the things I have said is certainly also political. It's also just facts. That if we want to bring down the prices, then the best way of doing it is to deploy more renewables. The IEA has estimated that from 21 to 23, the European Union saved 100 billion euros. So that's more than 33 billion euros a year on deploying new renewables. So that's the new renewables that came online. And since then, we have managed to increase how much new renewables we get online every year. So last year it was 78 gigawatts, this year it's probably going to be 89 gigawatts. So it is going in the right direction. But we need to do it faster. And there's not one silver bullet, not one thing we can do that will speed up this process tomorrow. But there are many things that in themselves are significant, and especially if you add them up, they will make a real difference. First and foremost, we need faster permitting. And I'm not talking 10 or 20 or 30% faster, I'm talking significantly faster. So we've proposed that as a general rule, it shouldn't take more than 6 months to get a permit for a new project. So, not a decade, as it is often the case now, but 6 months. For more complicated projects, maybe up to 2 years. So this would fundamentally change the speed with which we can transform our societies, transition away from fossils. Second, taxation. Easier said than done. Again, I used to be minister in a country where I did not do what I now preach. Nonetheless, I will continue preaching it because we do need to lower the taxes on electricity. And I have to say that when member states point to Brussels, say that they want us to lower prices, say that they want it even in the short term, they themselves have the key to one of the few things that you can do that will help in the short term. And that would be lowering the taxes. It would also be getting rid of the parts of the electricity bill that has nothing to do with electricity. This differs from country to country, but there are countries where you pay your TV via your electricity bill, for instance. Tariffs. To have a more cost-reflective tariff system is important. So there's many things that we can and will do that when you add them up will lead to us lowering the prices quite substantially. We've calculated that if we implement the actions that we propose, and by the way, this is not only new things, this is also implementing what's already been decided, then we will save 45 billion euros already this year. And this will increase year by year, and in 2030 it'll be 130 billion euros a year, and in 2040 it'll be 260 billion euros a year. So this is not small money. This is by implementing and doing the things that are just in front of us that we need to do. So, we do have a lot of opportunities. We do have a lot of possibilities. And yes, this is a world that doesn't look like anything we would ever think we would see again. With our closest friend and ally, historically speaking, the other side of the Atlantic, maybe not being so close anymore. This also is a fundamental challenge for us. But, and I don't want to sound cynical, but it is also an opportunity. Because if they are moving away from what we know is the cheapest and best and most efficient way of producing energy, then surely that must put us in a better place. And if we look at our social models in Europe, with the level of education, with the skills that we can deliver, with the social fabric, the social capital that keeps our societies together, with the support for the union, it's higher now than it's ever been before. With our ability to make decisions, probably not as fast as a president can sign a piece of paper in the White House, but pretty fast if we have to. And with all of the trade imbalances that is necessary to make it also last and to make it implementable, that actually puts us in a pretty good situation. So we can do this. We have the will to play and the power to win. So I promised you a story about the Vikings. Do you know how they managed to reach America before Columbus? Why they got to Greenland hundreds and hundreds of years before other Europeans? Actually, it's not because of the big muscles, and it's not even because of the ships. Others had ships like that as well. It was because of the sails. Very difficult to make. It took them as long time to make a sail and was just as expensive as it took them to build a boat.